Still no news on the Twins signing anybody, but we got your questions, 3 of them that we're going to answer, but not before, like Dave likes to say, we get locked on Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, hi, how are ya? It's Locked On Twins. I'm Brandon Warren, your host. You can unfollow me on the tweets at Brandon_WARNE and follow me on Blue Sky, the Skeets at warren.bsky.social. Happy to be coming to you here a little early in the day on a Tuesday. We've got a very exciting guest coming up. I don't know, not in this episode, but our subsequent episode. Let me bring in Dave Brown. Dave, do we want to spoil who it's going to be?
Well, I mean, you kind of set me up to, but we're hopefully going to talk to Keith Law today about his prospect rankings, Major League and Twins, which is supposed to drop today. Mm-hmm. Keith's a writer for The Athletic and has been with ESPN, and it's but that's not this show, but it is a related topic to what we're talking about today.
Yeah, we do have a few questions, and they're prospect adjacent, if not necessarily, well, they're either prospect adjacent, prospect related, but it shouldn't infringe too much on Keith's territory. Thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. And of course, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we're your team every day. Love to hear from you in the comments. If you're watching us on the YouTube premiere, tell us your favorite kind of ice cream. No, I don't. We just love to see comments. It's fun. It's engaging. And I love to go back there and see what people are saying, or if I'm watching the premiere with you, playing along in the comments. But this episode, by the way, is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, just a few days away. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Everything good, Dave? I guess I didn't even really check in with you. Dave, as you know, BBWA member, baseball writer,
raconteur, Kansas City area resident. Yeah, I'm getting over, or have gotten over. I'm not sure if it's pneumonia that was diagnosed as possible pneumonia or bronchitis. So lots of Kauffman Stadium going on around here, but feeling better and getting excited that spring training is like in 10 days or so, something like that. So it comes fast.
Kind of fun opportunity. I'm going to be doing some work with a website called Puckett's Pond, and I think we might have some work from Dave there too, hopefully. Still working out the details.
But we don't have any details on that, but that sounds good. That's we had always wished that we did more with Access Twins, and this is a way to do something like that.
This is an opportunity. So, yeah, very exciting. But more on that in the near future as we work toward that. Today's episode, we're going to talk about 3 questions submitted from listeners, and I did prep you ahead of time, Dave, so I'm not trying to entirely spring them on you, but I am eager to see if your answers differ from mine, because our discussions this winter have been fairly in lockstep. We've had kind of like similar / same ideas. So we exchanged questions but not answers. So we studied for the test, but we're not copying each other's answers. So keep that in mind as we dive in. And
that's Dean Wormer. We are not stealing the test. So
all right. Well, the first one is maybe my favorite one, and it is: if you had to bet the farm. My family has a family farm, but it's not mine to bet. But what player currently not in the organization would you bet on being on the opening day roster? Ben in Mounds View wants to know. That is not a question sponsored by FanDuel, but, I bet you could probably get some action on that if you really ask them nicely.
Yeah, really. This question, by the way, I don't want to say it gave me a headache, because I don't want to be pejorative or anything, but that's like a cosmic needle in a haystack. Like, who out there, not on the Twins roster, could you see in the Twins roster? So the first thing I think of course, is everybody's favorite trade candidate, Dylan Cease, who's been in the news forever and ever.
How many candidates do you have? How many candidates you have? I have 3. That's I'll start from there. I have 3 candidates that I'm going to narrow down to 1.
That Dylan Cease is the only one I can think of. It's like there's so many players. I don't know. There are a million of them out there. There's so many possibilities. But can we just start with Dylan Cease and then I'll go, oh, yeah, I thought of that guy too. Or, if someone else gets mentioned.
Well, so I did a radio hit in Duluth on Monday with Bruce Siskey. Good dude. Love doing that show up there. And he asked me about Dylan Cease. And he said, well, what's it going to take? And I said, well, there's a year left on his deal, or at least until he's a free agent. He's a year of club control, $13 million or something like that. I said, you're not going to trade Walker Jenkins or Emmanuel Rodriguez. At this point, I think both of those guys are off the table due to Walker Jenkins' pedigree and Emmanuel Rodriguez's proximity to the major leagues. So I think unless you were going to get Zach Gallen signed for 4 more years in a trade, then maybe you have one or the other of those guys on the table. So I said, you're probably talking about Luke Keeschel plus 2 prospects that the team that you're trading with, in this case, the Padres, choose, maybe one from your 10 to 20 and one from your 20 to 30 range on MLB Pipeline. And now, again, we're going to talk about Pipeline a little bit here. That is still not updated for 2025, but 2024 is still a fairly good rating on their site, or fairly accurate. So I'm thinking if you get Dylan Cease, it's probably going to cost you Keeschel or one of your most prized prospects that's not one of those top 2 guys, plus 2 more guys. Is that in the ballpark?
I would say when Twins Twitter was kind of arguing about Dylan Cease and what it meant that his name was in the trade rumors and how Christian Vasquez fit into it, that whole kerfuffle, I was thinking, what would it take for the Twins to get him? And I think that Keeschel is the starting point. Now, that doesn't mean that I think it's going to take a lot more talent than Keeschel, but I think that's the guy that you would move. That's the guy who would be
Raya, like Marco Raya. It would have to be whatever guy up there they like the best. If they don't think they need Keeschel because they have Jake Cronenworth signed for the next 61 years, that's fine too. But Keeschel would be
yeah, and Cronenworth, you can slide him over to first or DH him or whatever. He's got a little versatility there. So Keeschel's the guy that came to mind. That, excuse my cough. Like no matter who this person is, if there is a player on another team out there, I think Keeschel's the one that they're dangling. You don't see anything you like, and I think that's the guy that the Twins organization can feel like, all right, this is a person who has value, who will be comfortable giving up. As you mentioned, Walker Jenkins and Emmanuel Rodriguez, there's just a little too much luster on that, and it would have to be an amazing kind of trade, one that you don't see very often. So
if you got Sandy Alcantara for one of those guys, you
sure,
might be.
And he's and he's coming off Tommy John, and you never know with Tommy John. Right. So there's always that doesn't mean he's not going to be traded. That doesn't mean someone's not going to be interested in dealing for him. It just means caveat emptor.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think Keeschel you can sell as a high end prospect, but also close to ready. So you cross or you check off a lot of boxes for other teams with close to ready, good player, fairly versatile. So,
he's a guy too that not to jump our other segments, but
yeah,
that's a guy who you could see if things break a certain way, if a few dominoes fall, if this doesn't work out, if that doesn't work out, if he has a great camp, not maybe breaking camp, but being a guy that's on the team this year and being an important player. So
leapfrogging a Deshaun Kersey to make the roster or something like that. No question about that. My 3 are all right-handed outfielders. And so I went with, I think Randall Grichuk is like the free space if we're playing bingo. We've been talking about this a lot. I was told he would love to be a Twin. The money's just not right at this point, at least at that point now, probably 10, 12 days ago. So prices obviously dropping as the temperatures have here in the Twin Cities. We're now at -2, by the way. We were like 30 the last time you and I talked. Anyway, so the price on Grichuk, we'll see where that goes. Certainly not an option in center that you'd want to rely on in any meaningful fashion. So how much you need that when you have Willie Castro on your roster and Austin Martin probably on your roster vacillates. The other option, the second option, Harrison Bader, who to me is a sort of Michael A. Taylor type of player. Like not there, I don't know that their body types or any sort of like physical attributes are all that comparable, but he's going to give you good defense and center, some pop, some speed, but he's not going to walk and he's going to strike out some. With that said, the way the Twins had to lean on Michael A. Taylor could have gone poorly, right? But he had a pretty decent year. Ideally, when you sign or get a player like that, they're going to play more in the corners, against a left-handed pitcher, a spot start in center. And you can really get a nice value from a guy like Harrison Bader if you play him 80 games and it's, 50 and, or no, probably not 80, probably more like 100, 110 if you're Rocco, but like 30, 40 maybe in center and maybe 50. But mostly in the corners against lefties. You can really make a guy's numbers pop if Harrison Bader is mostly playing against left-handed pitching. Now, the third one, and one that I had it kind of slipped my mind, and I was shocked he was still a free agent, is Ramon Laureano, who really picked up down the stretch with the Braves last year, was worth like 1+ Fangraphs WAR in like 65 games. I think it was 1.3 and 67, if I'm not mistaken. And the thing there is the defense. I'm not really sure if the defense is where it needs to be, where you could put him out in center as much as you might need to or want to. And again, we still don't know how much that matters. But lots of strikeouts, doesn't walk, 350 batting average on balls in play means those numbers that he had might come down a bit and might have fueled his run with the Braves. But between those three, I think Bader is the one I keep coming back to as, maybe there's something else there as far as, another level of power or maybe batting a fluke season of batting average if you can have him face more lefties than righties. So Bader for me, better defense. He kind of gives you a little bit of everything from that group of three. Of those three, first of all, do you think I'm onto something or on something? And two, do you think you have a preference of those three?
I would say it depends on how things might shake out in spring training, but I like the skill set that Bader brings, having a better defensive player and someone against left-handed pitching. That's still aspects of skills that I like. I would like this bench / platoon / complementary supplementary player to have. So I would say he's the guy on that list as far as the players you've mentioned. And thinking about this, there have been other people that have been either linked to the Twins or, it's more of like a wish, a hopeful thing. I don't think he's available right now because free agency is still going on. We've still got the back end of free agency with Pete Alonso and so forth and lots of other players. Yep. But if Lamont Wade were to be made available.
I love that.
Looking at the Giants roster right now, he's kind of important, but there's also been talk about how they're going to go out and get this guy and that guy and kind of finish off their offseason with a few more moves. I think they're
going to jump in on Pete Alonso. That's a good point because the Twins need outfield help and first base help, but don't need to focus on one or the other specifically. And he scratches a lot of those itches, as does someone like Taylor Ward,
right?
Who we said too. So
yeah. So if I were to add another player to your list generally, or at least a kind of player, it'd be somebody who could play first base and you wouldn't be hurting too much. I think there was a little bit of a discussion yesterday on Twins Twitter about how, the Twins lost their best bat in Carlos Santana going to Cleveland. And, while he wasn't that, certainly.
He's a good player,
Carlos Santana not there. He was a good player and a lot of value on defense at first base. So I think if there's a spot on the lineup where they could use an upgrade as far as a starter goes, it's still first. Yeah. It doesn't, like you said, it's somebody maybe who can play first or the outfield. But if they were to get somebody like Lamont Wade who could play first base and do some other things, get on base and so forth, that would be nice. I think that's, you also, do you have Lamont Wade at home in Edouard Julien? Is he kind of like a mini Wade as far as, maybe not someone that's able to play the outfield, but left-handed stick who can get on base and maybe play first base, possibly. So if it comes to that, maybe you have Lamont Wade already on the roster. But I think somebody like that is the next obvious need for the roster for the Twins.
All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll hit these last two questions. And I think I have a bonus one too, so we'll throw that in the mix as well. Well, we're rocking with FanDuel here at this time of year because Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, if that's your cup of tea, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature, by the way, lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. I couldn't emphasize that enough. It's bing, bang, boom. You are right where you need to be. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if that bet hits, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59. Quickly, before we get into our second question, Dave, does JD Martinez do anything for you?
I interviewed him, and he was one of the best players in the league. That's my joke. So, yeah.
I think that's the new copy pasta. I interviewed JD Martinez, one of the best. If people don't know what we're talking about, on the bottom of almost every baseball tweet you see, you will see some like bot, or it might be a person who just bought BOUGHT a bunch of space on Twitter that is like, I interviewed JD Martinez, blah, 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 blah. So like I've turned that into I don't think I have. People have turned it into a copy pasta,
and it links to it's like a 5-year-old interview, I think. I seem to remember.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's interesting. This kid interviewed JD Martinez. I think I'm going to click on this. In 2018, I remember this.
And now this kid is in law school.
Right.
Like it's not a kid anymore.
Even though we know what this is, I'm sure I'm not sure that we know what it's all about. Like why is this happening? But like JD Martinez for the Twins? I don't know. I
mean, you need a right-handed stick if he's if you are going to pay $8 to $10 million, which again, that's not the Twins budget as far as we know, or you can get JD for like 2 or 3. Hey, grab a right-handed stick, try to recreate the Nelson Cruz magic and see what happens. I don't know. I mean, I'm not opposed.
He did. He dropped off a little bit last year.
Yeah, he wasn't great.
400. Sometimes it's hard to slug a lot in Citi Field. It can be I think it's a pitcher's park, but that, he, other than the COVID year, that was his worst season since he was on the Astros and then they let him go. So that's now 12 years ago. So I don't know. You sort of hamstring yourself. You wouldn't put JD Martinez in the outfield. You wouldn't give him a glove. So that's kind of scary. So I would say, sure, invite him to camp and then hope that someone else beats him out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see if it comes to that. I mean, it doesn't seem to have a real bunch of offers, but
you'd think there'd be people lining up to interview him. I mean, sign him.
Yeah. So much for that. Maybe he's the one paying for the campaign for that.
Now you're talking.
Yeah.
There's another meme. Now you're using your head, your noggin.
I'm definitely gonna posit that theory today. All right. The next one is from Matt, and Albert Lee wants to know, what prospect outside the team's top 10 do you think will have the biggest impact on the MLB club in 2025? I have my take. Do you want to take yours first?
Yeah. I can't, like I said, we don't have a lot of Twins top 10, so we're going with some old information. But
yeah, I guess I went with the 2024, which is probably a little bit off because, like, for instance, they have Charlie Soto 8th. I don't know if that's where he'll be behind Gabriel Gonzalez. Probably not behind Gabriel Gonzalez anymore. But like, I think Kylie McDaniel had him like 99th or 100th. So if we work toward the back end, we're probably a little more likely to at least be safe-ish. It's not like if you said Billy Amick for some reason, and you're not going to, I don't think, at 11th, I don't think he's jumping into the top 10, or if he does, he's still a pretty good sleeper.
I was looking for people who are prospects that I kind of had heard of, who have a chance to be on the roster. So
You're going to steal mine. You're going to steal mine.
I know. Well, I think there's only like 2 guys that I think that are jumping out at me. So I have a backup.
Okay.
I think it's got to be Iverson Cassiano, right?
Okay. No, that's not mine. So that's good.
Okay, good. As the Rule 5 guy, I think that is, he's got the team wants him to make the roster. He's got good stuff, and he's rated pretty well in the prospect zone. 11th, I think, on Aaron's. No, he's not that high. He's 22nd on Aaron's. So maybe
they moved him to 13th on the Twins. Again, the pipeline, the dated pipeline,
dated pipeline.
Yeah.
So just because he's a Rule 5 guy, we haven't seen him. We're going to know probably. We're going to know in the first week of camp if he's got a chance, and then it'll be 2 weeks before there's like a real chance. So we're going to know pretty quickly. This is we're getting word from the backfields. It's not working out. We're going to know that pretty soon. After 2 weeks, it'll be like, all right, we're going to see him in games. He's got a real chance to make the team. So I think that's kind of the timeline for Iverson. I think, but that's my guy. He's 23 years old, and he's got less than 2 months of AA experience. So that doesn't sound, we're talking about a long shot, whoever this is, but I think Iverson is my guy.
So my guy, lefty, big arm, been injured a lot, but Connor Prelip. I thought that might be who you take.
Well, I saw him, and I thought someone had him ranked 9th. And I'm like, well, he's got to be out of the top 10. Or this question is, well, Aaron has him ranked 9th, so I dismissed him. But I don't want to steal your thoughts about Connor, but I think that's a good one. Go ahead with your.
Well, he's 24. He just turned 24 in January, so less than a month ago, and he's been hurt. Now, why this cuts both ways is he's only pitched as high as high A. And he's killed everywhere he's been, but he hasn't been anywhere for very long for it to really come back on him. But with that said, I think the idea here is they don't have a bullpen lefty, and we've been talking about this on and off the air. Like, is it really necessary? If they decide a bullpen lefty is necessary, at some point you've got Prelip at an age where he is probably not likely to be just completely destroyed if you bring him up here and he gets hit hard. Like, you can send him back down, he can work on things and come back. It's not like he's a 21-year-old kid.
He's almost like your own Rule 5 guy that you don't have to return.
Yep,
he's
exactly. Like yep, and so he scratches the itch of lefty. He's not so young that you'd be really worrying about exposing him. And if he's got this history of arm issues like he does, he's almost like a left-handed Cantorino in that way. You're not going to want to waste too many bullets down in the minors if he's looking good. You might bring him up and have him work out of the bullpen. And if he is lightning in a bottle for you out of the bullpen, Griffin Jack's the year before last, maybe instead of last year. Last year is a lot to ask. That's a very helpful pitcher, and I don't know. I could see it happening. Could he leapfrog Brent Hedrick on their lefty organizational pecking list? I could see it. And so it was either going to be Connor Prelip for me, and I had to really think twice about picking him over Peyton Eales. So
Peyton Eales is my second guy.
Well,
and if you were going to pick Iverson, I'm like, I'll pick Eales.
So Eales is 25. Just like such a fun story, and right on down to like how he's built, his numbers, where he came from. Everything is so much fun. He's almost like Williams Astudillo in terms of like, I think his lore could get to that level. Right. He may not be as like unicorn looking. Williams Astudillo had everything going for him. He didn't look like a ball player, but man alive, he could really hit. And with Eales, the only thing I had that gave me question or pause was infield. They have so many infielders that you'd need something to happen. Now, with that said, you could pretty easily add him to the 40 and get him up here, especially if he can help you at shortstop. Obviously, their shortstop is a little bit injury prone, and their options behind him are a little bit lighter now with Kyle Farmer out the door. But I think, I have no qualms with Castellano, Eels, or Prelip as the biggest impact outside the top 10. And if you think Prelip is in the 10, if he counts inside the 10 for you, I'm going to go with Eels, because I think that they might keep him moving quickly, kind of on like that Carson McCusker path.
Well, not to get ahead of ourselves with Carson McCusker, Brandon,
but
look ahead to the next segment. But
so the third question is from Corey in Rochester. Who is your deep sleeper to make the team out of spring training? And I'm going to go first just because I want to. I'm taking Michael Hellman, and it's mostly just right-handed stick, gives you a body you can play in a few different spots. The biggest issue I have is, what does he do that Austin Martin doesn't, and do you need two of that guy? Now, they're not. I'm not saying they're the same. They're not the same. But if you're going to ask Michael Hellman to do something, have you already asked Austin Martin to? If that makes sense, you know what I mean. Like,
and if Austin Martin would benefit from continuing to play every day in AAA, does that make sense?
Right. And so for me, Hellman, it's maybe it's not a deep enough sleeper, but I just don't think anybody's really counting on him to make the roster. I think the bench right now is pretty comfortably Vasquez, Castro, Austin Martin, and then maybe Hellman's that next guy, and I am just missing the boat. I think, though, if you consider that they're probably going to sign an outfielder, which I do believe, and I still think Kiersey is ahead of Hellman in terms of like helping a big league club in terms of like what people see. Like Kiersey, I think he's how do I want to put this? He kind of just is who he is at this point and showed the best version of himself. Hellman, I still think we don't know enough about to really get a feel for if he's as good as he showed, or I don't know. I value Kiersey higher on the depth chart in my own mind. And so if Hellman's not a deep enough sleeper, then, I probably lean back on Prelip too, because again, you don't want to waste those bullets, even if it's at AA Wichita where he hasn't even pitched yet. That would be the deep sleeper for me, but it's going to be hard to sneak anybody into this bullpen if you're trying to keep Castellano.
I like that you picked Hellman for Corey from Rochester's guy, because Rochester's where the Mayo Clinic is.
Hey,
see how it connects?
There's layers to this thing.
There's layers to that. There's layers to every sandwich. And Mayo is usually one of them.
Yes.
Hellman, I see as a guy but was going to get a lot of run in spring training. So I think we're going to see a lot of him.
He might be like, when you look at the end of spring training, he might lead the team in plate appearances.
Yes.
You always have that, like, let's figure out what we got in this guy, where, who's going to lead the team in appearances. Could be Castellano, could be Michael Tonkin. If, it's guys they're trying to feel out. And Justin Topa could lead the team in appearances this spring, assuming his arm holds up, and just, small little bits here and there to see what he looks like velocity wise and that sort of thing. So yeah, I like that point that you're going for there.
So I guess my guy, he's already been mentioned, but I sort of hope that this is the spring and the year of Carson McCusker to get a chance. He's sort of like
love that dude.
He's the big, kind of the opposite of Peyton Eels as far as physical. Big dude, big stick. Coming from indie ball.
There's definite. Is it Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger from Twins? I think those two, like, if they both made the big leagues, there would definitely be like a Costaco's brothers poster from back in the day, or I don't know how you say their last name, but when I was a kid, that's who was making the posters. I could definitely see a Twins reprisal with those two.
Well, there might be reprisals if both those guys are on the roster from a depth chart standpoint.
There might be issues, yeah.
He's I don't want to say it's now or never because that's really unfair because he sort of came out of nowhere in his mid-20s and showed after indie ball that he belonged at least to AAA. He's established that he can hit at the higher levels of the major league. And I think there's an opportunity. We talk about, is it necessary for the Twins to have a lefty in the bullpen? Well, it depends on how the other righties get those lefties out. 2 years ago, Cole Sands was better against lefties than he was last year. He's a little vulnerable against them in 2024. But you definitely need a first baseman. There's no question about that. And it's very unsettled right now if the Twins have one. They got Miranda on the roster, and there's some other players. Larnach can play over there, I guess. There's somebody I'm forgetting on purpose. But yeah. I feel like there's an opportunity for Carson if they give him a chance, if he gets hot, to maybe play first base or certainly DH.
So you're going to teach him first base?
I think his size indicates somebody that probably should be over there.
I do too, and I've honestly I think you and I've had this discussion because with his height, how has he never played first base at all? That kind of target to throw to. I mean, if you're not going to have Carlos Santana, who's a short little dude but catches everything, what's the next best thing? Have Mount Everest over there.
They didn't really have a need at AAA. Junior Severino played mostly first base, and
right.
He still could. There's still possibly a corner outfield spot for him, but I say give him a chance to play first base and see what happens. Maybe the reason that they haven't played first base is because they know that he can't. And that's certainly possible. But
we couldn't know that, so that's okay. I don't feel ignorant if we don't know that. By the way, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Carson McCusker, esteemed former guest of Locked On Twins.
I think we should try and make that happen again. We should bring him back and say, what about first base, Carson?
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know if I asked about first base or basketball because of his height. And I try to be so Greg Olson always said I would ask the questions that he'd never heard before. So I think I asked first base, and I think it was just it had never come up. And I have to go back and watch the tape, go back and watch the film and see. But again, can't hurt to ask him again. And I saw him at CHS Field last year, waved to him. He's like, oh, hey, he recognized me. So that was cool. So who knows? Maybe we can get him back on the program again.
I like to think that I would wave at you and recognize you if I saw you in person.
Maybe. I'm going to wave at you and say, hey, thanks for hanging out with us because this has been Locked On Twins. So, yeah, thanks for hanging out with us. This has been Locked On Twins, as I literally said 2 seconds ago.
You can't say it enough, though.
But 3 quick questions with Brandon and Dave. Twins, we're begging you. Sign somebody. We want to talk about a real thing. So, for Dave Brown, this is Brandon Warren signing off, saying thank you so much for hanging out with us on Locked On Twins. And we'll see ya
tomorrow night
with Keith Law.
We're not inviting Alexei Casilla to spring training to play first base, though. We're not doing that.
Oh, if Danny Santana did.